Answer to homeowner questions based on the data is what we're going to be talking about today. Before we get into all that, please like, comment, subscribe, share, all those fun things. This is a continuation of the short 1 minute video I put on my social medias, and then doing the more detailed breakdown version with screen sharing data from both a national level and a local level, to help you kind of understand some of these top homeowner questions that people are having right now at this point, whether you're looking to list and sell, which is a lot of the conversations we're having right now, or also buy as a first-time home buyer, or maybe you're a first-time home seller looking to buy in that next one, and all the different nuances and sophistication that go into pulling all this off. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the data of it all, so that we're not necessarily going off of headlines and popular opinion, what your brother, uncle, aunt is saying. This is the real data from national perspective, local data, and then also just what I'm seeing from working in the field day in, day out as a producing agent that sells about 50 to 60 houses a year. So I got a pretty good feel of the market and what's going on, and making things happen and pulling them off from, that direct experience that you don't necessarily get from reports. So anyway, so the first thing to look at is, selling is based on the rate environment. This is why we talk about mortgage rates so much, and how much mortgage rates and the money supply and the cost of money really impacts buyer demand and the ability to sell your house and everything else that goes with it. So as you can see here, based on the demand, based on rate environment situation, when the rates are higher, the buyer demand / ability is lower, and so it's gonna be weaker because people's buying power is not as high, so they're not as able to buy your house, even if it is a good house at a good value. If the buyers ultimately can't buy it or won't buy it, that's the end all be all, is that you got to have a buyer for your listing to sell on these things. So obviously when rates are lower, people are more able and willing to pay more for a house, and so that's where prices go up with it all. And this is really just my job, is to help you assess and navigate, all the financial pieces of the market when it makes sense for your life situation to do so. Because really at the end of the day, people are trying to time the market, and timing the market's never been a good strategy, just because it doesn't always seem to work out well, because it's very difficult to time the market. It's more about time in the market, number of years in the market, and where does it make the most sense for your life situation of why you're selling, or why you're buying with everything. A lot of times it's because you have a bigger family, you need more space, you got a job relocation, there's some life situation that's driving your home sale. And then from there, we navigate the financial market, the real estate market, and everything else that goes with all that. And then we try to provide a high level of expertise with servicing the advertising, marketing of your listing, the negotiation, the feedback, all the things that go into it. It's very sophisticated, nuanced. It's definitely not as simple as throwing it on the MLS and hoping it sells. There's a lot more advertising goes into it, assessing the market, assessing the data from both the national level, local level, and then your neighborhood level and your personal level, that goes into it all. So a lot of it is based on the money supply and interest rates. That's why we pay so much attention to that. As you can see by this graph, rates are, and again, I wouldn't hold my breath on rates coming down, because I know we've been told this a lot by the Fed and a lot of other people, and then they just haven't. That's why I never spat out that phrase that a lot of people said of date the rate and marry the house. It's a very silly, foolish statement to make, because there's no guarantee that rates are going to come down, as we saw. So in a lot of ways, I would expect, like it says here, rates to remain above 6% for the year. And even modest drop in rates will bring both buyers and sellers into the market on everything. So this gives you an idea of how many people think rates are going to go down in the next 12 months, 29%. So it's starting to go down. People are starting to lose faith that rates are going to go down. I think there's a lot of people that are real optimistic, as you can see here, that they were, and then now it's going back down. I think people are realizing they kind of got told and sold that rates were going down, and they're not. I never said they were. So I just want to go on record to say that. I think the Federal Reserve said they were. A lot of other people said and thought they were, and they just flat out didn't, as you can see. So this is also something to keep in perspective as a historical view of mortgage rates and projections. And honestly, more than anything, I'd like to look at what happened and what the data is, not necessarily the projection on everything, just to get some perspective on 2018 and 19. they're around 4.5%, 5%, which I think a lot of people would kill for that to get back to that range. If we do that, I honestly think there'd be a feeding frenzy again. Then 2020 and 2021 were unicorn years because it's basically like the Federal Reserve, the country was going broke with rates that low because they basically are making no money on any of this. And that's not a sustainable business model for the country of America or the United States of America as the country. Because what you got to really realize is that our country is a business and the United States of America is a business. And a large place of where they make their money is off interest rates and capitalization and finances. And so when you bottom out the rates like this and you bottom out the country, that's basically asking the company of the United States of America to operate at 0% profit margin, and they can't sustain that long term. And so that's why you're seeing a lot of the big swing back this way, because they got to recoup and make up for all of these losses or slow years back here. So even though we had a heyday of money coming through, like we knew if you were smart economically and understand finances and how this stuff works, you understand like that wasn't going to last for a long time and we're going to pay for it eventually, which is where we're at right now. And that's why you saw rates jump up this high, and why I don't see them really coming down below 6, because they got to make up for all of these years where they're kind of losing their butts on not really making any money off their money and understanding how the whole financial system works. So we get it down to 6, that'd be cool, but I wouldn't expect any of that or plan for any of it. But you can kind of see where they're projecting. But if anything, I would kind of get used to a new normal of being around this 6.5% area, for planning wise. If it goes lower than that, great. But I'd rather plan conservatively to just plan for a 6.5% interest rate, for the next year and a half or 2 years, however you want to look at it. But that's kind of what everybody's projecting as well. When you look at that, it's unlikely that the next policy rate move will be a hike, which comes from Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve. What else we got? Odds of it cutting is going up, but we'll see. I never put too much stock in some of these projections or guesses because that's really where they're at. But a lot of this has to do with where the overall economy is at with job creation and inflation and the labor market and that kind of thing. So that's why there's so much talk around the economy, because what you got to really realize about real estate and the residential housing market is it's a tertiary situation, meaning it goes industrial, commercial, residential as far as what drives our economy. Industry is the prime economic mover and engine of our economy. And it starts with industry, then it goes to commercial, and then it goes to residential. So when you're looking at the residential housing market, you have to take that into account, that it's basically subject to what all the industrial and commercial markets are doing. And then it trickles down to the residential market. And that's why there's so much talk about the economy and what's going on with commerce and industry and all those things, because it really funnels into the real estate space and what's going on with that side of things. So it's more about navigating and understanding all those things than it is necessarily trying to create some magical miracle situation. So that's why we're talking about rates so much. It's why we talk about the economy so much with the inflation rate, job creation, where the economy is growing or shrinking, and then also the Federal Reserve's monetary policy, because that does influence our residential housing market and what we pay for houses and the cost of houses and that kind of thing. So yeah, and it's volatile. It's very up in the air, but I could see it staying around 6% for the rest of the year. So, and obviously that creates problems for Gen Z, anybody looking to move, because a lot of people are rate locked in like 2, 3, 4% interest rates, don't want to move to a 6, 7, 8% interest rate is probably the bigger challenge than prices. There are down payment assistance programs that help with a lot of this, and you don't have to be a first-time home buyer. That's one way we're overcoming this. Also, we're seeing a lot of Gen Zers or generational wealth inheritance money being passed down from parents to their kids in order to be able to buy a house to get going. So that is expected, a cash gift from family to help fund their down payment or a large portion of it. So if you are a parent looking to help your kid, that's one good way to do it. Or if you're a kid, that's a good way to go solicit your parent for some money to get going in your first house and that kind of thing. Here's some tips for Gen Z home buyers to start with. Up your financial literacy, start saving, keep it on mind, do your research. I'd love to educate people on how this really works, how to really be successful. at owning and buying real estate and selling it and the whole plan of all that, almost like a financial advisor for your real estate. Plus, I came from construction background. I know construction, and I love playing this game. This one is probably the biggest one I want to help people stomach. And this is where there's a new normal in place. And I think a lot of people are still living in 2019 to 2021 terms, possibly 2022, but not really. There's still a lot of people trying to chase a $1,200, $1,500 a month payment when the new normal is $2,000 a month. You know, this is honestly what I paid for my house. It was about 2,000. Now it went to 2,097 as far as up in my escrow payments for taxes and insurance. But this is a new normal that I think a lot of people are going to have to adjust to paying for a house. That if you want a house, you're going to have to adjust to, I can afford $2,000 a month. And the thing is, if you make $6,000 a month or more, and you're paying $2,000 a month on your house, like that's about 33%, debt to income ratio, just based on your house. That's really not financially stretching yourself or putting yourself too far. It's just the priority of where you spend your money. If you really break down your finances and look at where you spend your money and what you spend your money on, $2,000 towards your house is a good, smart place to put it. And, obviously everybody's personal situation is their own, and I'm not technically your financial advisor, but I'm here to help you through real estate successfully. And if that was me personally, like I would look at that as a healthy situation overall with it all, especially if you got dual income. And you got to really assess it that if you have dual income and you guys are making, let's say $8,000, $10,000 a month, and you're paying $2,000 a month toward your house payment, that's really not a bad situation. Consider, how much you make globally and putting that together. I think there's too many people that are trying to force a $1,200, $1,500 a month payment that just doesn't really exist anymore. And so that's, I think, a big realization, come to Jesus moment, understanding that like that's not really going to change for a while unless you put significant more money down, or you just get into your first house and write it out, get some equity built till you get to your next one on it all. So that's kind of a new one that if you look at like 25 to 33% of your debt to income ratio, like that's fairly healthy and really nothing to be worried about. Blue agrees. That's why he's putting his commentary in this too. So yeah, he really agrees now. Buddy, stop it. Let's see. So also, if you look at like our population distribution of who's alive still and who's living here, the baby boomer generation is 20%, Generation X is 19%, millennials are 21%, and most of us have already bought a house, are doing well, and most of us need to sell a house now at this point in order to get a bigger house or move for a job or something around that. And then Gen Z is really just starting to enter into the first-time home buyer piece of it all. So that's why we look so much at if Gen Z would be able to buy a house or not, because it starts with the first-time home buyers buying houses that the millennials are selling so that the millennials can move up to the next ones to buy Generation X's houses, who needs to buy the baby boomers houses, who in a lot of ways, the baby boomers are sitting on a lot of the houses and not selling them because now I don't blame them because they got them paid off. That's their only asset. They're comfortable. They like the place. They don't know where they're going to go. They're having a hard time moving on to that next, phase of their life. And that's honestly where the most opportunities at is freeing up that equity here for these guys here to pay for it, just based on, again, life situations, life scenarios. Like life goes on and you're going to need to buy and sell a house or live somewhere. And so that's going to naturally go on throughout all the time. So that gives you an idea of where the national trends are at. One of the other national trends we're seeing is builders building smaller houses to combat this affordability thing. So that's one other trend we're starting to see is that builders are starting to build smaller houses. So that way they can bring the price down and make things happen for people to buy houses. And that's true. So that's the national data. But then if you look at the local data within Wichita, which is the bigger one I like to look at, is, okay, cool. Does that affect Wichita or not? Because I know a lot of us have this attitude of like, oh, that doesn't affect me. I live in Wichita. Yes, it does. And what you got to look at is that home sales, the number of home sales actually up 20% in April compared to the prior year. The price is up 17.8% compared to the prior year, with an average home price of $237,887. And that's an increase of 7.6% from April 2023. The average price was 220. So if you look at the data of our local market, you can see where number of units is going up for April, price is going up for April. And then if you look at new builds, they were up 44% from this time last year. And the average home price, though, for a new build is $393, down 9.3%. So we're still seeing in Wichita that builders aren't necessarily building smaller houses, although I know a few builders and developers that are starting to build in that 250, 300 range to combat this affordability issue, as opposed to the $400,000, $500,000 range where I think a lot of builders like to build in because they make more per house and don't have to turn over as many houses, is really why that is. Let's see, and an increase of contracts written by 1%, and we're about 1.7 months supply. So that's all the data locally of what's actually going on in our market. And then where's the graph? Closed listings by month. You can see we're following a fairly healthy bell curve like we usually do. Average price is continuing to grow. We're at 254 is what our average price, and that's for a closed listing. That's not just anybody and everybody. So 254 is our average price at. You can see where it's healthily growing steadily. Median price is just the middle. I don't like really to use median prices. I like to use averages more. Median is just where the middle's at, not what the sum of all of them divided by each other is. Average days of market starting to come down. Average days of market is 28. This is probably one of the most misleading things that comes to what's being reported, because if you report median days on market at 6, that would make you think that houses are flying off the market when the average day is 28. So that's really a better indicator of how fast your house would sell. Obviously, that's just our region wide. I can break this down to just your neighborhood and your home sale specifically. So that gives you an idea of average days on market, but you are starting to see the trend of them going up over time too. So 2022, they're selling faster. 2023, they're selling slower. And then same thing with 2024, they're selling slower. And so it's not just a matter of the price, it's also a matter of time on the market, how long it takes to sell your house and how much you got to play the game of, oh, well, it's been on the market for a while, what's wrong with it? And then now as a listing agent and the seller, we got to battle these sharks and these hawks coming in trying to beat us up and really play hardball and negotiate with us because it's been sitting on the market longer. They think they can come in and haggle us around. And in some ways they can, and in other ways they can't. Just depends on your personal situation and what's going on with that. So that's a fun game to play that, collectively, I've been feeling it across the board. A lot of people are just stressed because of, like you saw, the economy, house prices, interest rates, days on market being longer, life situations going on. Just people are, I think, returning back to quote unquote normal life, and this is what it looks like. But honestly, in some ways, like our world and our society is just getting more and more stressed out and frazzled, and it's boiling over into the real estate market, all services industries across the board, and it's a thing. We'll put it that way. I think everybody's feeling it. Good thing is, though, we're seeing more inventory come to the market year over year. 2022, you saw more. 23, you saw more. And 24, I think you're going to see more too. And one of the biggest misconceptions about real estate is that people have to come down on price. They don't have to come down on price. They can stay there and they can not sell the house, because for the majority of people are in want to sell situations, not need to sell situations. And so if they don't get the price they want, it doesn't happen. Usually they just stay and they keep the house is where it's at. And that's really when you're buying a house, it needs to be a 3 to 5 year decision that you're making. New builds are like a 5 to 10 year decision that you're making. Because whenever you try to go turn around and sell a house in a year or two, you're probably going to take a loss. Like that's the biggest thing that people aren't fully taking into account is when they buy houses, they're long-term decisions, 3 year, 5 year decisions, but you got to write it out for that long. And if you don't, like you got to plan to basically be bringing money to the table to sell your house because they don't appreciate that fast. And in order to get your house sold, like you got to pay the marketing sales professionals that make that happen. It's not as simple as throw it on Zillow, do it FSBO or whatever, like maybe a few rare circumstances that's the case. But if you turn around and sell it in a year or two, you're more than likely going to take a loss. So don't make a decision buying a house hastily and then not be committed to living there for at least 3 years. Because as you're seeing, like there's more listings, there's more days on market. The price is fine, but it just may take longer to actually get your house sold and off the market. And obviously this is with real estate marketing and sales professionals. Doing on your own is going to be even harder and take even longer. So it's not like anyone can do it better than what an agent does. Let's see, average price. So this is an interesting stat for average price. We'll see how the rest of the year holds, but from 2023 and 24, the active listing price hasn't really changed much. If anything, I think people are realizing more of where the market's at. And this is a pretty good example if you compare active listing at 365 compared to sold listing of 254, how people want more for their house, but they don't necessarily get more for their house just because they put it on the market. And a lot of them, when they don't sell, they just stay. That's where that comes in at. So time will tell to see how the rest of the year goes. Again, average days on market. So this is active average days on market is 63. So sold days on market was 28, but then active days on market is 63. So you kind of got to look at that data and those stats together to make sense of everything. And, you know, this is what you can come to expect when you work with us as a listing agent, to both prep your house to sell, to hopefully get it sold within the first week and weekend with our active launch marketing plan. But then if it doesn't sell, how do I assess the market? How do I assess the data? How do I understand what's going on with the showings, the advertising, the feedback, and then how can I adjust condition or price in order to get it sold, or just ride it out until that one right buyer comes through that likes your house and wants to buy it. And, you know, that's where we can provide you sense and understanding to this mystery of real estate. Hopefully this video is kind of helping you show that, see that we know what we're doing, and we do it based off facts and science and data. And we take into account your emotions and feelings and how you feel about it, but that's not honestly a good strategy to operate from. So that is the rest of what I'm going to cover here as far as answering some of the top questions for homeowners, what we're seeing, what we're dealing with. There's a lot of cool creative things we can do for you personally. I'd love to talk with you about your situation. If you want to shoot me a message, reach out, see what we can do for you before this selling season is over, because there is kind of a prime time to list and sell your house, just based on activity, market activity, for you selling, but then also to buy the next one and all that goes on, plus your summer availability for kids, traveling, good weather, all that goes with it. But appreciate you watching as always. Hopefully that's helped you learn a little bit more about real estate, Wichita, and everything in between. If I can do anything, I'd love to help you and talk to you, but we'll talk to you later. Appreciate you watching. See ya.